Hello, I'm Bill Phillips, a volunteer at the museum, and this time I'm going to talk to you about the town seal and the history of it. In ancient times, when a sovereign wanted to make sure that a document was authentic, they would use their own seal, which was often a wax impression, and it was made either with a signet ring or a large seal that they would have used. We hear occasionally of Thomas More and people like that having the Great Seal of England, and that meant that any document that was sealed with that became official. Well, in 1833, Herne Bay became a town, and it was originally governed or organised by a group of commissioners. The Act of Parliament issued then arranged for that to happen. I think there were about 12 of them. But in 1894, the town was made an urban district council. And when it reached that elevated position, it was responsible for a lot more than just the immediate town. And so they developed a stamp. Well, before all this happened, all items from Herne Bay, souvenirs, had a little shield on them to let you know where they came from, so that when you bought them, they could be identified as I went to Herne Bay. And if you look at the enlarged version of this shield, you can see that it contains various historical references. First of all, you have the sea and the cliffs. Obviously, the sea was very important in the origins of Herne Bay, because without it, you wouldn't have had the cargoes landing, you wouldn't have had any of the town developing. In the background, you find the remains of St Mary's Church at Reculver, commonly called Reculver Towers now. This was demolished in the 19th century, and the towers were preserved by Trinity House. Now, Trinity House is responsible for navigation marks and lighthouses around this country, and they wanted the towers to be left so that ships coming up the estuary had a recognisable reference point that they could take bearings on as they travelled. So, and it also represents the history of the area going back into Roman times. The clock tower here was unique to Herne Bay when it was built. It was thought to be the first freestanding town clock tower ever built. And it is something that most people who've been to Herne Bay would easily recognise. So that is why that is on there. And in the foreground, you have the heron. Now, people often wonder why the heron for Herne Bay. In Henry VII's time, there was a family called Nola who took over the ownership of Strode Park. On the top of their coat of arms is a crest, and on the crest is a heron. And the Nola family owned farms both at Eddington and at Attersea, which comes down to the seafront. So the eastern side, certainly of Herne Bay, and probably a bit of the western side, was owned by the Nola family. And so the heron crest refers to that. When the town became an urban district council, they decided that they needed a fancy stamp. And therefore they brought in a stamp like this, which is operated, if you can see, you have your official document. You place it in the stamp, so you've got the document there, and you stamp it down, and if you stamp it properly, this produces an impression. of varying quality depending on how hard you stamp it down. The original stamp was not a circular one, it was this oval shape, and this shows you the reverse of the image because this was the bottom sheet. This one shows you the front part, and you can see from this it says round there the seal of Herne Bay Urban District Council 1894, and it's got exactly the same items on it that we saw on the previous shield. In 1948, the town was granted a coat of arms. Obviously, they had put in for this, feeling that they were suitably important, and the coat of arms is far more full of references than the original shield that they had, or the stamp. The machine, though, incorporated this coat of arms into their circular stamp, so it's probably easier to go through the items on this enlarged image. At the top, we have here a single masted galley, which actually has 4 sets of oars, so 8 oars in total, sitting on the crest, which is above the helmet on the coat of arms. This is to represent the Roman element at Reculver in the first 4 centuries, and the image on the sail is that of an oxen, which is to do with Henry Oxenden, who owned the land upon which Herne Bay was built. So Oxenden had bought the land from the Nolas and their successors. So that is why the oxen is there, which may seem slightly odd. On the coat of arms itself, you see that we have 2 crosses and the heron. Well, we've mentioned the heron with its reference to the Nola family. The 2 crosses here refer to the Christ Church in William Street and Christ Church Cathedral in Canterbury being the mother church. So that was the link between the town and Canterbury. The motto at the bottom, Ne Sede Malice, means do not yield to evil, which seems to be a very topical motto at the moment. Don't give in to the pandemic, I suppose, could be a modern translation of it. So that really is what all this is about. And again, the stamp is simply to verify the authenticity of the documents being produced. This stamp would have been kept very, very carefully. Nobody would have been allowed at it except the secretary to the town council, who would have had the sole use of authenticating documents. The reason this stamp is now in the museum is because in 1974 the Herne Bay Urban District Council was subsumed into Canterbury City Council, and therefore Herne Bay lost its independence of Canterbury. So it no longer needed a stamp.